of you may know, I have a movie review channel that I have had probably since around 2010, perhaps. I started that channel because I felt like I had a lot to say about movies and music that I wasn't saying here on my styling channel, and I didn't want to distract too much from the main purpose of this channel, so I started the other one. It doesn't have a lot of followers, but I didn't expect it to, and it's been hard for me to devote time to it like I wanted to, and so the channel sort of just goes neglected for months, sometimes years at a time. And I was in the middle of a project on that channel reviewing all of Alfred Hitchcock's movies. I started watching them from his very first silent film, and then I was going to go through and review them all. However, I have decided, after hemming and hawing, that I think I'm going to remove that channel. I feel like it's being neglected far too often. It's not regularly being posted to. And so I might start doing a few more movie-related videos here on this channel. Since this is a style channel, movies are such a huge contributor to style in the decades that I love that I don't think it's really all that out of keeping with the theme of my channel anyway. So I will make sure and post it in the title that it is not going to be a styling video, it's going to be a movie reviews or movie related video, so that those of you not interested in that can just bypass those videos. But occasionally I will try to do, like maybe once a month, try to do either a review or maybe a group of reviews all together in one video. And I think one of the things I'm going to do is take all of my little mini reviews of the Alfred Hitchcock movies and maybe do them like a bunch in one video and then a bunch in another video, so that those reviews are still sort of being seen, but they're really succinct and easy to follow. Because this was a fun project and I'm still in the middle of it, so I didn't want to give it up entirely. So I thought that as a introduction to this sort of like series on my channel here, just sort of movie related stuff, I would just give you a hint at my movie taste. A little bit about movies and me. I have been watching old Hollywood classic films since I can remember. My dad is a huge movie geek, and so he introduced me to all the movies that he loved, and he always felt like were the best movies. Most of them will also be movies that were somewhat critically acclaimed. So therefore, you know, I just feel like life's too short for bad movies. I've said that before. So I always do a little bit of research. Rotten Tomatoes is my best friend. I love to look at it and see what the general opinion is of everyone, because I feel like that's usually pretty close to accurate, because it's kind of like taking everybody's reviews and putting them together. So the Metacritic score is kind of important to me when it comes to current films. But when it comes to the old stuff, you can usually find out which ones were the best from each year pretty easily, just looking at lists and AFI reviews and all of that kind of stuff. So this is my list of my top 10 movies. For those of you interested in film, this might be something that will be useful to you, because these might be some movies you haven't seen or that you haven't thought to give a chance. And yes, I am a list maker. I have a list of 100 favorite movies as well, but I'm not going to give you that one. I might give you a link below to my top 100 films, because I used to have a movie review blog years ago that I never quite let die, and so I actually have it listed on that blog. If you really are interested, I'll post a link below. But my top 10 movies are as follows. Number 10 is On the Waterfront, starring Marlon Brando and Eva Marie Saint, and Karl Malden. Oh gosh, and so many other great actors. It's not a movie that I would originally have thought that would be interesting to me. It's sort of considered in some circles to be sort of a man's movie, but you'll see that a lot of these top 10 movies are considered men's movies, and I'm not exactly sure why that is. That I'm not a big fan of the chick flick. Which I say quote unquote because I think it's a silly expression. I mean, if it's a great movie, it's a great movie, but I'm not a big fan of chick flicks or romances. I like romance, and one of my top 5 is like the most romantic movie, in my opinion, ever made, but it's just not where I come from generally in my movie taste. It's not like if it's a love story, I will have to see it. Romantic comedies, for the most part, I think are very, very tepid, and I just could not care less. But On the Waterfront is definitely a love story, in addition to being a very, very high, not really high energy, but a very, very effective drama. It stars Marlon Brando. He's an ex-prize fighter, and he has become a longshoreman, and there are very corrupt bosses in the longshoreman union, and it's basically about his attempt to stand up to that that just standing up to that sort of corruption. And he falls in love with Eva Marie Saint's character, who is the sister of Othello who was killed due to this corruption. And so he feels a strong attachment to her. I'm not going to give you any spoilers on that, but there is a definite link between the two of them, and their love story is wonderful. There's a kiss in this scene, in this movie, that's one of the great on-screen kisses, I think. So definitely check it out if you're a romance fan, but give it a chance even if it's not something that you think you would otherwise love. The direction is by Elia Kazan. He's considered sort of a pariah of Hollywood, but he's phenomenal. He's such a great director, and this is his best movie in my opinion, so definitely check this one out. Lee J. Cobb is sort of the villain in it. He's horrible and extremely effective. Carl Malden, I think, was nominated for this as well. He may have won, but it's Marlon Brando's best performance. It's one of my top 5 performances from anyone. Number 9 on my list is my only foreign film to make this list. It's Life is Beautiful, or I think it's La Vita è Bella. Is that right? This movie was directed, of course, it's from 1997, and it was directed by Roberto Benigni. He won the Oscar for it. He won Best Actor for it. It's somehow both tragic and life-affirming, and any movie that can somehow toe that line and be both tragic and life-affirming is always going to be is always going to leave an impression on me. This movie is about a wonderful love story between this sweet Italian fella and this sweet Italian girl, and it just happens to take place right before the advent of World War II, when Jews were about to be sent off to the concentration camps, and it manages to handle that subject with such a beautiful attention to the love story aspect of it that you sort of see it in a completely different light. Both Roberto Benigni and his son are sent to a concentration camp, and they're sent to a separate camp than his wife is sent to. He has to be able to, in some way, make the situation bearable for his son, and the way that he goes about doing that is comical and tragic and one of the sweetest things I've ever seen in my life. So the end of this movie, although it is got a lot of sadness, it's tinged with sadness, it's also extraordinary and extremely uplifting. So don't avoid it just because of the subject matter. Give it a chance, because it's something that has never been done again and will probably never be equaled. Number 8 is The Great Escape, also considered a man's movie, I believe. This is a story that is based on a true story loosely about a concentration camp during World War II. I really like concentration camp movies, just I don't know why. I think it's because it's such a sad part of our history, but also a time that people were able to make the best of that time and triumph through it. So maybe that's why. Triumph of the human spirit. But anyway, The Great Escape is about a group of individuals in a prison of war camp in World War II who basically try to escape from this unescapable camp where they have all been put together because they were supposed to be watched more closely, having tried to escape many times in the past. And so they attempt to tunnel out of this camp, and it's about the story involving that, and it's about the individual characters. It stars James Coburn, it stars Steve McQueen, it stars Richard Attenborough, and all of these are actors that are placed together. James Donald, some of the great English actors with some of the great American actors from the 60s. It just played beautifully together. There are no females in this movie, except for maybe some nurses in the background somewhere. If that's a turnoff for you, I don't know why it would be, but you know, it's based on a true story, so of course you're going to be viewing it with that in mind. But the adventure aspect of it, and the fact that they're able to make this true story about escape from a prison of war camp actually into sort of an adventure movie, is really, really something that the 1960s did well. This movie is directed by John Sturges. He did a lot of really colorful action films, especially when you go back into the 60s. He did The Great Escape, he did The Magnificent Seven, The Old Man and the Sea. So he did a lot of really, really great, Bad Day at Black Rock, that's another really great one. So he's great for being able to take these sort of like, you know, man against the world situations and really making them an exciting adventure story. The Great Escape is a long movie, but it doesn't seem very long, and it can kind of be watched in spurts. You don't have to like stay glued to your screen the whole time, but you won't want to turn it off because the entire escape is just so involved and so exciting and thrilling to kind of watch it come together, all the little steps that have to be taken for it to come together. Every one of these movies in my top 10 I consider to be perfect films, so this is no exception. I think it's perfect. I don't think there's anything I would change. Number 7 on my list is The Manchurian Candidate. This movie took place during, it's sort of what a lot of people would consider to be a dated story because it takes place during the Cold War between Russia and the United States. And sadly, it was remade in 2004. Don't ask me why. I have no understanding or respect for movies being remade that don't need to be remade. It just really bothers me. If you're going to remake a movie, make it completely different. Kind of like when you do a cover of a song. Don't do it exactly like the original. But also, I mean, when a movie is already perfect, don't think that you're going to improve upon it with special effects and craziness in her. So, you know what I mean? It's stupid. So The Manchurian Candidate was filmed in 1962. It was directed by John Frankenheimer. I think he also did 7 Days in May, which was another sort of similar conspiracy film, which is great. It stars Lawrence Harvey, who is a British actor, but he has put on sort of a proper American accent for this film. And Frank Sinatra, one of his best performances as well. And it's basically about a former prisoner of war who is brainwashed into being an assassin. And sort of how this comes to light and how that Frank Sinatra attempts to help Lawrence Harvey, who is the victim of this horrible thing, is really intriguing, but it has one of the most suspenseful, politically driven endings of any film I've ever seen. The suspense at the end of this is so palpable that I've watched it multiple times, and I never ever get past how suspenseful it is. Like, it's always got me doing this at the end. It's so good. So anyway, the other thing that makes this exceptional, not only is it well directed, well acted, and really interesting story, even if it's a bit dated, but Angela Lansbury, it's my single favorite supporting performance by a female. Angela Lansbury is phenomenal in this movie. Phenomenal. She's so bad. Her villainous sort of temperament and just the way that she portrays this role is so amazing that it's hard for me to explain. I just always tell people, just go watch it. Just go watch this and tell me what you think of it, because she is, it's like sort of spine tingling. She's that good. And any of you who know Angela Lansbury as Mrs. Potts or as the Murder, She Wrote's, you know, Jessica character from Murder, She Wrote's, this is what got her noticed in serious film. And I still don't think she gets enough acclaim for what she did in this movie and the villain that she plays, which is one of my favorite villains ever. Anyway, in this time of sort of political, this volatile political atmosphere that we find ourselves, even though this film is considered dated because of the Cold War, aspect of the story, I still feel like it has a lot of impact on anyone today who can kind of see how things are sort of rising around us and how things are becoming a little, like I said, more volatile. It really still resonates. So watch this with that in mind. The political conventions and everything, I feel like they almost ring more true now than they have since this was filmed. It's weird, the comparisons between this movie and the way that the political scene is playing out right now. So watch it with that in mind. Anyway, on we go. The next movie on my list is my very favorite musical, and the only one that is in my top 10 list that is a musical, and it is the movie Gigi. Now, Singing in the Rain and The Sound of Music, and there's all these great musicals out there. Oliver. There are a lot of great musicals that are fun to watch, that are exciting, and American in Paris, they're beautiful, they have great music, they have all this great stuff going for it. It's just got a certain feel behind it. I'm a musical fan from way back. I love musicals. But the reason that most of the musicals don't really make my list of top movies is because most of the time they're not completely even. Sometimes they're great musical numbers with kind of a tepid storyline or boring performances, and then sometimes it'll be like a great musical or great performances but sort of lackluster musical numbers. Gigi doesn't have any numbers in it, such as dancing sequences, which I do sort of, you know, that's one of my favorite things from any film. Gene Kelly movies are some of my favorites because of that. However, Gigi is an all-around great movie. It's not just a musical with some great songs in it. It is gorgeous, and it is well acted, and it's unlike any other musical. I can't think of another musical that's even close to Gigi. The performance by Leslie Caron is endearing and precious, and I adore her. The performance by Louis Jourdan is masculine and bold and fun. The performances by Hermione, can't think of her last name, but Mare Chevalier are so charming. And the costumes are breathtaking. It's like an illustration of Toulouse-Lautrec has been brought to life. And even if you're not a big fan of the songs, Thank Heaven for Little Girls, The Night They Invented Champagne, the title track, even if you're not a fan of these, you will love the costumes and the styling. It is like watching a painting, the entire movie. It is absolutely gorgeous. Vincent Minnelli did this movie. And let me see who did the costumes. I've got IMDb pulled up because I knew I'd forget names. Okay, the costume designers were by Cecil Beaton. Let me see what else he did, just to put us in the right spot. My Fair Lady, of course, the Ascot races, some of the best costumes ever on film. The 1948 version of Anna Karenina, the highlight of that movie might have been the costumes. So that gives you an idea. He was a force to be reckoned with in the costume world, and I am a Edith Head fan from way back, but the costumes in this movie might be my favorite costumes of any movie. When I was a little girl, no kidding, I know I'm talking too much about this movie. When I was a little girl, I actually took paper dolls and made paper dolls based on this movie and created little dresses that I thought looked like the dresses that they wore, especially the purple one at the end that she wears. Oh my gosh, with the feathery hat. Oh my gosh, gorgeous, gorgeous. And when they're in Maxim's and you see all of the costumes all around you, it's like just a feast of lush elegance. It's gorgeous. So even if you're not a fan of musicals, watch Gigi. Just for the experience of it, but also because the acting is just great and it's one of the world's best movies. So because I said so. All right, the next one, we're going to number 5, top 5 now. I'm gonna have to edit the heck out of this video. Okay, number 5, my favorite dialogue of any movie ever is from number 5, which is all about Eve. It is probably the best dialogue, most memorable dialogue, most quotable movie of any movie. Definitely on my list, but I think of all time. It's Bette Davis's, in my opinion, best performance. She plays a stage actress named Margot Channing, who has sort of like developed this wonderful reputation for being the greatest, one of the greatest actresses of her generation. And Anne Baxter plays a very, very influenced fan of Margot Channing's, who will do anything to get close to her, will do anything to get to know her. And the progression of Anne Baxter and her character and her career is what this film is really about. It's about the life of the stage actress or the stage actor, because it also deals with the directors and directors' wives. Another great performance from this movie is with by Celeste Holm. And Celeste Holm and Bette Davis are best friends, but Celeste is the director's wife. So she is having to sort of see Bette Davis's side of things, but also to see her husband's side of things, since rarely do the actress and the director see the same. However, even though all of these things are integral to the film being successful, the best performance, in my opinion, of the movie is still George Sanders. Even though I think it's Bette Davis's best performance of her career, I think that George Sanders still trumps the movie. I still think he trumps her. This performance as the theater critic of Addison DeWitt is one of my all-time favorites. Every single line he delivers is delivered with, I mean, perfection. It's perfection. It's witty. It's quotable. He just takes those lines and just runs with them. It's also Marilyn Monroe's, I think it was her screen debut, and she's hilarious in it. She has some great lines in it. She's got a very memorable little side character going on, and if you are a fan of theater in general, it's a must-see, but if you're also a fan of the movies and you want to see something with just a flawless acting ensemble, cast, or a flawless ensemble of actors, this is the one to watch. The most romantic movie ever made, in my opinion, is A Room with a View. James Ivory and Ismail Merchant, they have a vision and they are able to achieve that vision almost flawlessly every single time. If you've ever seen Merchant Ivory movies, if you've ever seen Howard's End, if you've ever seen Remains of the Day, if you've ever seen A Room with a View, you know what I'm talking about. The Room with a View is my favorite because it is so shamelessly, unabashedly romantic. And anyone who's watched this movie knows, especially as an adult, if you have watched this movie, you know, I'm talking myself hoarse. It's all about lush landscapes in Florence, Italy, and it's all about the Arno River, and it's all about this room with a view, and it's all about this sweet little Lucy Honeychurch that's touring Europe with her aunt, and she's just sort of like completely naive to the world, and this sort of like young man of the world, George, that falls in love with her and doesn't say much but still makes a huge impression. And then there's this hilarious side character of her suitor, Cecil, who is played by Daniel Day-Lewis. It was the first time I ever saw Daniel Day-Lewis, and I remember thinking, who is this idiot? He's cute, but he's an idiot. That's what I remember thinking, and every line of his is quotable. It's beautiful dialogue, beautiful acting, but mainly it's just about the mood and the atmosphere and how completely romantic this movie is. I've seen it more times than I can count. I just watched it again recently, and there's still to this day, even though I saw it as a 12-year-old and fell in love with it, to this day I still do not see any flaws. It's just a brilliant movie, and I think it's from 1986, but it just doesn't matter. It so perfectly encapsulates the time period that it's supposed to be in. Sorry, number 3. I am obsessed with Frank Capra. I love the way his movies make me feel. Frank Capra is, to me, my very favorite director. However, not all of his movies, of course, make my top 10 because I have to pick favorites. Number 3 and number 2 are both Frank Capra films. Number 3 is You Can't Take It With You, and number 2 is Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Now, You Can't Take It With You is a love story between an oddball, goofball little gal and the son of a banker, and the way that their families have to somehow coexist and have to mesh together. That's really all it's about. But when you watch this movie, it makes you immediately want to be a Lily. I can't explain what that means. You just have to watch it. You want to be that person that her family is. You want to feel like that you're living every day to its fullest, and that you're not doing something that is useless, that regardless of whether or not you feel like you have to do it, you want to make sure that it's something that makes you happy. And that's what this is all about. It's about just finding your bliss and being the person that you feel like you need to be, regardless of what that means to society. And so it's brilliant. Great acting, great directing, but you know, Frank Capra is just also known for how joyful he makes a movie, and you just feel it's like Prozac. It's just this great, great mood lifter. So anytime somebody's going through a dark period, I always tell them, go watch You Can't Take It With You. And I know that seems too simple, but I really do think it works. It's just great because it makes you think about your life and how that things could always be worse, and that you need to look at the bright side of things. But it's also just such a cute, cute love story as well. And James Stewart and Jean Arthur are so great together, which is why I also love Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Now, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington has an extremely emotional impact at one point in the story, so that's why it kind of has a slight edge. Also, it's a political story. It's about Washington, and it's about the political corruption in Washington, and I'm not a person who takes sides in politics. I'm completely neutral politically, and the real reason that I love this movie is not because of any of that. It's because I feel like it's a story of good versus evil, and how good is always going to have an uphill battle, but that it can win. And that's what this is really all about. It's about it's about how doing the right thing is always the best decision. But it's also James Stewart's best performance. I hate to say that about somebody whose career was so long, that this performance, when he was so young, is his best, but there is no doubt in my mind, this is his best performance. It is so moving, and it is so wonderful, and he is one of my favorite on-screen characters. So, and I would say that he's probably my number 2 hero in movies because of how wonderful he is and what a good person he is and how well he portrays this character. But of course that leads me to my number 1 movie and my number 1 hero on film, which is Atticus Finch, and To Kill a Mockingbird is to me still the best movie of all time. When you read books and you don't expect that movies can lead up to them or can live up to them, it sometimes makes you a little hesitant to see the movie. I'm glad I saw the movie first. I read the book in high school, but I saw the movie when I was a child, and I still feel like that this is one example where the movie's better than the book. And I know a lot of people don't agree with that, and that's totally fine. But this movie is perfect. I feel like it is so profound, and there are moments in this movie that will always make me cry. It is beautifully constructed and put together. It feels calming, but also it feels like there's an energy beneath the surface, and it just really makes you think about race relations, about family relations, about everything. And it's just a movie that I feel like really promotes love and tolerance in a way that no other film has been able to accomplish. Atticus Finch is my hero. So anyway, that's all there is to it. And hopefully this was not too hard to watch. I talked for way too long, talked myself hoarse actually, but I'm going to edit through this and try to make it a little more watchable. But hopefully this lets you know where I'm coming from with my film tastes. And in the future, I will do little reviews, not nearly this long, but little reviews of films here and there just that really affect me and that I love. Occasionally movies that I hate, movies I feel like are overrated. That might be a fun category. But let me know what you think. And yeah, this could be fun. It's something that we can make kind of interactive. But we'll talk to you later. Bye.